My fellow Nerdikins, welcome back to a long overdue episode of That's So Nerdy. I apologize for how long I've been away, but I have been busy getting my business set up and trying to, really get things in order to move my life forward for myself. But I have a deck profile for you today, and honestly, it's a really old deck, really old leader, but I recently discovered it, and I think it's actually kind of like slept on a little bit because of how basic the front side is, but the awakened side is really good in my opinion, and that's going to be Piccolo Jr. Now, when this card attacks a leader, you get to draw one card. So unfortunately, if you want to attack battle cards with it, you don't get that draw ability, but my personal play style, I don't tend to attack battle cards anyway unless I absolutely have to. All right. When you have 4 less life, you can awaken by choosing up to 2 of your energy and switching them to active mode. I love that. I would much rather switch 2 energy to active mode than draw 1 energy and restand. Draw 1 energy. Restand 1 energy and draw 1 card. I would much rather restand 2 energy, especially with the way I have this deck geared. You typically draw a lot of cards, so you don't really need to worry about drawing that extra 1 card during your awaken step. And then once he awakens, he becomes Piccolo Jr., Evil Reborn. And then whenever he attacks, you get to draw a card. So it switches from leader to just any time he attacks. But the better part of his ability is his activate main, that once per turn, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 5 or less and KO it. And this card gets 5,000 power when you pay 1 green energy. So that's really good because you'll be able to pop one of your opponent's battle cards. Most battle cards that they play early game, you're going to want to pop them, especially like, for example, if you're playing a red Broly deck and they're on the 3, in between the 3 or 5 drop of their chain, and then you just use him to pop one of them, and it's awesome. Alright, and then in this deck, we are running 2 unisons, which is a little unusual for me, but you'll see why here in just a moment. And then the first unison we're running is 4 copies of King Piccolo Dimensional Conqueror. He's got the Rejuvenate excuse me, I apologize. He's got the Rejuvenate ability once per turn that came around in the Vicious Rejuvenation set. So you remove 4 markers from him, take 1 card from behind it, and then pitch that to your drop, and then remove those 4 markers. You take a card off the top of your deck and put it into your life. So you're refilling your life, which is awesome. That's actually like my favorite mechanic that they decided to come out with in the Vicious Rejuvenation set. And I think it's just really, really good. And then you'll notice that he's got a specified cost of 2, but he's got an activate main that you can pay 1 green energy if your leader card is mono green, which this one obviously is, and your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand. You can play this card with 1 marker on it. So that's really good, especially in decks, playing against decks that allow your opponent to draw a lot of cards. That helps you to get your unison out there faster. Unfortunately, it does only come out with 1 instead of however many you tap to bring it out, but sometimes you need to make that sacrifice, and it's really nice to actually have that option. And then to add a marker, you choose 1 card in your hand and place it under this card, and then both you and your opponent draw a card. And then at the end of your opponent's turn, they pitch a card to their drop area. And then you can play a card with an original cost of 1 from your hand to the board for free by doing that as well. And then, like I said, we're running 4 copies of this because you want that ability to have that 1 extra life, honestly, because typically that's all you get out of these Rejuvenate unisons, unless you're playing a really heavily controlled deck. You typically only get to rejuvenate once because of the amount of markers that you can put onto your unisons at one point in time. And like I said, we are running 2 unisons, so the second unison that I'm running is 2 copies of Vegeta Resolute Agent of Destruction. Now, I highly recommend running this green unison in any mono green deck. It is amazing. It is a specified cost of 4, so it is a later game play type of unison, but it is an amazing unison. It has double strike crit, and then when you play this card, you choose 1 card from your hand and discard it, and then KO all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier. All of them. It's amazing. Love that ability. And then to add a marker to him, you get 5,000 power, so he becomes a 25,000 double strike crit. Awesome. Opponents hate it. Double strike crit is so powerful in this game. And then if you remove 5 markers, if your later card is an evil wizard card, or all of your energy is mono green, which is why I suggested playing it in any mono green deck, you get to choose 3 cards in your opponent's hand and discard them. So it's a little bit of hand control too. It's an amazing unison. And like I said, we're running 2 copies of that. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this deck. You will notice that it is very heavily Namekian themed, which I really enjoy doing when I make decks. I like making themed decks. The only non-Namekian card that we have in this deck is going to be this first one right here, and that's going to be Newfound Power Sungohan. He's in here because he's a 1-drop, and you can he helps you self-awaken, so you can draw a card when you attack with him. You can draw a card from your life, and then he gains 10,000 power and critical. So he becomes a 15,000 power critical, and he's helping you to get closer to self-awakening. And like I said, he's the only non-Namekian card in this deck, so it's the only one that's not going to be using the bond abilities that some of these cards have. And like I said, we are running 4 copies of that. And then first Namekian that we're running is Kindhearted Namekian Dende. It just you get to search the top 3 cards of your deck for a Namekian card and put it into your hand when you play him, and he's a 1-drop. So it's very helpful if you don't quite have the cards that you want in your hand at the time. You can just play him out. He's a Namekian, so he works with the bond ability that this deck is... What's the word I'm looking for? Is employing, I guess. And we're running 4 copies of that, so you have plenty of searchability with that Dende right there. Next card we're running is Gift of Power Guru. Excuse me. It is another 1-drop, only 1,000 power, but it's got an activate main that you get to choose 1 of your battle cards, and it gains 5,000 power for the duration of the turn. Now, that becomes important a little later, depending on what cards you get out with your field card, which we'll be going over here in just a few minutes. The reason I didn't open up with the field card is because it's not a life or death type of thing when it comes to getting your field card out there to being able to play your deck. It just helps. It's just very helpful. But like I said, this boosts any one of your battle cards once per turn by 5,000 power. And we're running 4 copies of this, so if you potentially have all 4 copies of him on the board, you can either boost 1 card by 20,000 power, or you can boost 4 different cards by 5,000, or any sort of combination in between the 2. And that just is really, really helpful. All right, the next card we're running is the last of our 1-drops. It's going to be Urgent Aid Kami. It's another one that makes it so we can draw a card. That's its first auto ability. But its second auto ability is the real reason why we're running this card in this deck. When your opponent switches energy to active mode using an excuse me, sorry, didn't mean to stutter there. When your opponent switches energy to active mode using a non-awakened skill during their turn, choose up to one of your opponent's energy and place it in its owner's drop area. So that's very powerful because, like, say you're playing against a Bardock's Crew deck where multiple cards allow you to restand energy on your turn other than just your awakened skills. That really is going to hinder your opponent's play because if they restand that energy, then they're going to have to pitch 1 card. And we're running 4 copies of this, so if you have multiples of this on the board, when your opponent does that, you can make them potentially pitch anywhere between 1 to 4 energy if they try to restand their energy. So that is why we are running Urgent Aid Kami in this deck. All right, next coming up is the first of our 2-drops. Pretty easy one to go over. It's got 15,000 power, speed attack Piccolo Jr., 15,000 power critical, 5,000 combo. He is in here because of the critical, obviously, and also he is playable using your field card for this deck, which, again, I will be getting to shortly. And we're running 4 copies of this card just to make it more consistent. Next card we're running is going to be our super combo, and that's Namekian Duo Saunal. I think that's how you say his name. But when you, if your leader is a green Namekian and your life is at 5 or less instead of 4 or less, I like that a lot more. This card gets plus 10,000 power for the duration of the turn, and you get to draw a card. So pretty basic super combo, except for the fact that you have the option of 5 or less instead of 4 or less. And of course, since that's a super combo, we're running 4 copies of that. All right, next 2-drop that we're running is Namekian Duo Purina. Now, he looks like he doesn't have too much going on for him at first glance, but once you read his activate main, you get to choose 1 Namekian card from your hand. So say you have like an extra Kindhearted Dende that you don't need at the moment, or you've already got a speed attack Piccolo on the board and you have one that you don't mind giving up. You can place that Namekian card under this card from your hand. You get to draw another card, and then this card gets plus 10,000 power and critical for the turn. So with the draw ability that this deck already has, it really makes it a lot better that when you put a card under this card, you also get to draw another card. So he becomes a 20,000 critical beater, and like I said, we're running 4 copies of that card, so you have the potential of swinging for, if you have all 4 of them out on the board, for 80,000 critical in increments of 20. If you don't combo or use your Gift of Power Guru, which is part of the combo to just boost them up so you don't quite have to combo with your cards, so you can use them for the special abilities instead. All right, next card we're running is going to be our first bond card, and it's going to be Nail the Namekian Ace. He's got bond 2, so as long as you have 2 battle cards on the board, when this card attacks, draw 1 card, and this card gets 5,000 power for the duration of the turn. So when he attacks, if you have 2 battle cards on the board, he gets plus 5,000 power, and you get to draw a card. Boom. More draw ability, more power boost. It's just really, really helpful. And he's another one. Everything from Nail and previous, except for the Gohan, can all be played using your field card. Now, all the cards that I say from here on out can't be played using your field card, but it really isn't that big of a deal because they're mostly for a secondary and tertiary kind of win con for the deck. Now, this card can be very helpful. It's Ready to Strike Piccolo. If you don't have the energy to play this out, we're only running 2 copies of this in here, by the way. pretty much because you can't play him with your field card, but he is a useful card. So if you are able to get him onto the board at the end of your turn, or at the end of their turn, your opponent chooses 6 cards in their hand, and then they discard the rest. So if they have more than 6 cards, they have to discard whatever's over 6 cards at the end of their turn. So that's really, really, really helpful if you have somebody that's just got crazy control and crazy draw ability. Like, for example, my Bulma deck has crazy control, crazy draw ability, and this would really put a hindrance on that. I don't know if it would really hurt it bad enough to really stop the dynamic of that deck, but it would really make my choices, or whoever's playing its choices, a lot harder. All right, next card that we're running is going to be another bond card. We're running 4 copies of this, and it is Kami's Power Piccolo. It's got barrier, double strike, and once per turn, if you have 2 battle cards on the board, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. No energy limitation, no power limitation, just pick one of their battle cards and KO it. It doesn't say ignoring barrier, so I mean, it's not perfect, but it's still a really good card and works really well in this deck. And like I said, we're running 4 copies of this one. And that way it's just like a little more consistent. And it, like I said before, it is more of a secondary or tertiary win con, because mostly what you're going to be going for is running your Purina and putting Namekians under him and boosting his power and trying to go for your win that way. That's the fastest way to go with this deck. But I would say that the Kami's Power Piccolo will probably be the tertiary given the next card's ability. Next card that we're playing is our last bond card. It's actually our last battle card as well. And it is King Piccolo, Lord of Terror. Now you may be thinking, like, how is this the secondary and it's a 5-drop and the tertiary is the 4-drop? But if you look at the bond, if you have 3 Namekians on the board when you play this card, if you have 3 Namekians on the board, you reduce the cost of this card in your hand by 2. So it becomes a 3-drop when it's in your hand, but once you play it, it becomes a 5-drop again, so your opponent can't target it with things that target anything less than a 5-drop. It has double strike, and then when you play this card, you choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 5 or less and KO it. So it's a lot like your leader's ability, but it doesn't get a power boost, but it is already a 25,000 power double striker, and we're running 4 copies of that. All right, so like I said, that was the last of our battle cards that we're running. The first extra card that we're running is actually our field card, and that's going to be Planet Namek. Big surprise, especially considering the Namekian theme. Now, it is a 1-drop, and I'd say it's a mediocre field card, because you don't get, when you play, you don't get any searchability or anything like that. But once per turn, you can tap a green energy and pitch a card from your hand, any card from your hand, and then you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 Namekian card with an energy cost of 2 or less, and play it to the field. So that's going to be your Nail Namekian Ace that gives you draw ability. That's going to be your Purina, that is your pretty much your main win con. That's going to be your super combo. That's going to be Speed Attack Piccolo, your 15,000 critical, and then your Rejuvenate Kami, Guru, and Kindhearted Dende are all included in what you can play using this card's ability. So if you don't have those cards on the board or in your hand, it just makes it so you can possibly get them out onto the board and actually do it for cheaper as well. And we're running 4 copies of that, just so it's a little more consistent. You do get a little more, because like I said, it's not necessary for this deck to win, but it does help make it a little bit faster. You do get your bond abilities and everything to be able to play out a little sooner with that. And then next extra card we're running is going to be 4 copies of Sacrifice. Now it's very basic counter attack, and just like say Power Burst or Shocking Deathball, or what else? What's another one? Dimension Magic. You can take a card from your life, put it in your hand, and then play this card without paying its energy cost. So that's a good way to avoid taking some double strike damage, double, triple, quadruple strike damage. It's a good way to avoid taking any critical damage, because you will still be taking the damage from your life by being able to play that. But hopefully you've been able to have your Rejuvenate unison out on the board and put markers on it and get cards under it enough to be able to give you that life back. And then our final extra card is going to be Shocking Deathball. It's another counter attack. This one, instead of if my leader's a Namekian, like with Sacrifice, this card right here, if I have 5 cards in my drop, I can do the same thing. I can activate it by drawing a card from my life. And then this one, you negate the attack, and then you destroy one of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost of 2 or less. So that can be very helpful. Late game, it's not going to be as helpful because their energy costs are going to be a bit higher, but that's not something that you really need to worry all that much about. Sometimes they do have your opponent will have some lower cost cards out there to try and combat you. All right, well, that's gonna do it. Pretty quick, pretty simple deck profile, but it's very effective. My friend Tommy really hates playing against this deck because of all the critical that it does, and we've actually been putting together his Bardock's crew deck, which Urgent Aid Kami is really going to be damaging against. So he's going to hate this deck even more. But yeah, that is the end of the video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and smash that like button, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if there are any leaders or deck profiles that you would like me to specifically do. I have many more that I would like to do, but I feel the decks just need a little bit more ironing out and a little more tweaking here and there. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, and stay nerdy.